So a question that I think I'm going to ask all of you is, what do you miss the most in xAct? So what if you had to ask for something to be added, what would it be?
So I have to say that since I actually haven't worked quite a lot in this notebook in a number of years, right? But now somehow I recently have started a very large project as well. Because it's not still in progress, I will not say very much, right? Where I actually have to do more development of xAct, right? So here I think I was more an advanced user, and then I have realized that actually a lot of the things that I would like to do are actually already done. But then I have discovered this really going very deep into the documentation, right? I think it would be actually great to have a more some more extensive documentation of all the things all the commands that one can have, right? But probably this is very boring. But I have actually discovered, right, that many of the things that I may want to do are already there, right? And either you spend a lot of time and you find it in already very deep in the documentation, or I ask you or Alfonso or Thomas that may know, right? But then sometimes one is not really aware of this, and I think this is probably one of the main challenges, right? That it's now, so that xAct is so big now, right? That sometimes it's hard to have an overview, right, of this.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess this would be more like the request, I would say.
Okay. Fair enough.
In a sense, right?
Yes. Having better documentation is always a good thing. And for example, in the forum, we see that there are some questions that are repeated periodically. So that means that area requires better documentation. Thank you very much again, Juan.
Well, thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
Jose, you asked the previous speaker if he had some suggestions about how to improve xAct.
Oh, yes, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was one we discussed, is that the integration between xtensor and xcoba. So when you do formal computations with xtensor, and at some point you want to replace by values in a given chart, and then you need to cheat with the metric, because since you have defined a metric with xtensor, and you have this def C metric in xcoba, and you need to like cheat and replace the abstract metric of xtensor by this metric component, by this component metric of xcoba. And this is the part I've seen in the forum, because you mentioned the forum, where people didn't know how to go from abstract to transition from xtensor to xcoba. So the answer usually that I give in this forum is that to do brute force replacement, but it's a bit it looks like a hack.
Yes, so there was a very recent question a few days ago about that, and yes, I know what you mean, and I agree. It's something that should be easier to do, and effectively this is the function to do. So this code contains this function, which takes a symbolic matrix defined with def metric, and then a C metric, which is a C tensor object. And then this function is the one that will be able to get, so this is computing everything about the metric or curvature tensors. And then at the very end, we have this type of computation. So we had something here, which was this thing, a purely symbolic object. And then we replace that symbolic metric by the C metric. So metric is a C tensor object. So we can put here minus A minus B, and we see the metric. And then there are some additional. So because this was perturbation theory, there was also a replacement of a perturbation by the corresponding tensor and a scalar field by a function of coordinates. And so in the end, you get that thing, right? Which is a two tensor with those components. So yeah, so I think what we should do is essentially to have this function in the system so that we don't have to copy it again and again. But yes, you have a good point. My question to all of you, what do you think is the most important thing to add?
Well, this thing I mentioned here, if you don't go over to spinners as I've done, then if you handle more complicated expressions, you do need this sort of irreducible decomposition also on the tensor side. And that is something that we're really lacking. This requires young tableaus and well, some representation theory, which I need to read up on before I could possibly implement this. And of course, I would need a lot of time to and some help by people who knows that well. But otherwise, I think that with that one could handle, for instance, like the Bianchi relations, also in tensor language, and in some sense also multi-term symmetries in fair generality by doing this sort of irreducible decompositions, but on the tensor side. But in spinners, I think what I presented here, these tools are enough to get around that problem. So at the moment, one can translate things to spinners and then perhaps back if one wants to, but in the end, it would be good to have something purely on the tensor side.
I fully agree. Alfonso, the same question I posed to everybody. Anything you would like to see added to xAct?
Okay, I think this the implementation of principal bundles would be interesting, because that would allow us to give the other formulation of gauge theory that I reviewed. Also related to this, I think that the interaction between wedge product and this Lie bracket product, I mean, when you are in a session where in which you have several different products, like here, if I want to just write down the gauge equation, the Young-Mills equation in a principal bundle, I need to work with wedge product, with Lie bracket product, and eventually with tensor product. So one has there at least 3 products, and this I think that canonicalizer needs a bit more of training for that kind of situation.
Okay, good point. And just to finalize the event, I'm looking at the polls, and surprisingly, I was expecting that many of you would want all these messages removed, but it turns out you don't. There are more votes saying that we should keep them. So I think we will leave them there. So thank you very much again, everybody, for attending today. Thank you very much for your support of xAct. Keep using it. If you find any problem, please let us know. Use the forum. Thank you very much again for being here today.